Monkeyboy's YouTube channel is stance independently and intersubjectively the best YouTube channel. Subscribe. I'm talking from the heart.
Yeah, so monkeyboy's YouTube channel is the best YouTube channel. Stands independently, intersubjectively, and I'm very much speaking from the heart here when I say that.
I think he was a troll, to be honest. I think that dude was genuine, but if he was, it's not surprising.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, I do. I can hear you. Which year you want to talk about?
So look, I know that you want me to come up with an argument here. So I guess I'll say my share really quick. And then if you want to tell me why, like, what do you believe in? You just don't believe in God? Is it science, or what do you?
I believe in like a million things, maybe more. That's like a very vague question, but can you just tell me which year you want to talk about?
Yeah. So
the God one?
Yeah, God. Yeah, right. I do.
Okay, and you said you do have an argument that God exists.
Yeah, I think a lot of the times, just as humans, we read things and we believe things as we go, right? Whether it's astronomers saying that the Earth is flat, and then eventually we find out that it is, an actual sphere, right?
I don't know, just give me the argument God exists.
Yeah. So with the Bible, right? So we can make the argument that the Bible, right? And there's multiple people throughout history that has seen and encountered these things, right? And just like all of the different stories that are within the Bible that have been passed on from generation to generation. Now, where you see where Jesus was crucified, they've actually dug out remains where they found Jesus's bones.
Okay, let's just grant you. Okay, let's just grant you. Yeah, let's just grant you Jesus existed and was buried or resurrected, whatever. We can give you all of that. Let's just say Jesus resurrected. We're granting you that. Okay, why would I think there's a God?
So when he was crucified, though, and you saw the remains of Jesus, archaeologists have dug up his bones, finding only female chromosomes. So when you think about it like that, the Virgin Mary, right, when she had a baby, there was no male that could have got her impregnated. And they actually saw that in bones. So this is archaeologists finding these bones and putting that into reality. So how did she get pregnant?
I don't know why. It's starting to really piss me off when people don't know how to give an inference, and instead they ask questions when what they're supposed to be doing is rendering an argument in light of the claim they're making.
Well, let's try this again.
Let's grant you. Jesus resurrected. Jesus was buried. Jesus was born from Mary without a father. Just Mary happened to, just like Umbrella Academy style, she just got pregnant out of who knows what. Just spontaneously got pregnant, produced Jesus. Okay, we're granting you all of that. How are we getting to God?
I mean, dude, that's a fucking miracle. Sorry for cursing, but like that's
okay. It's a miracle.
Yeah, that's a miracle. That's only something that God could do.
Okay, well, that's going to need oh my God, there's a lot. Yeah, you're not going to be able to produce an argument for that one, but yeah, so by miracle, what we just mean here is some event that obtains such that the event's prior probability is astronomically low. Okay, so we're just going to call a miracle some event that's unlikely to occur and obtains. Now, we have a miracle, so what? Why would I think there's a God?
I mean, I'm just curious, and I know, again, like, you don't like the fact that I'm asking questions, but I'm curious to ask you, though, like, how do you think it's possible for her to have gotten pregnant if there is no God?
How do I think it's possible? What does that even mean?
How did she get pregnant if Jesus was born with only female chromosomes that were found in bones by archaeologists?
Okay, so it's nomologically possible, and it's logically possible. First, it's logically possible because it doesn't form a contradiction. Secondly, it's nomologically possible because it doesn't abrogate the laws of nature, right? There's natural regularities that we observe in the sciences, and nothing about that fact obtaining is inconsistent with any physical laws. So now, on two accounts, it's possible. Now, why would I think God explains that fact?
I'm sorry, say again?
I'm granting you the fact that Jesus was resurrected, was buried, and was born from Mary spontaneously, right? She was never impregnated, she just happened to give birth to Jesus. Granted all that data, how are we getting to God?
I mean, obviously what I said before, which is me repeating myself, which would be the fact that it's a miracle that someone would get pregnant.
It being a miracle, it being a miracle doesn't get us to God. Okay, so it's a miracle. How are we getting to God?
I mean, how else could she have gotten pregnant? Like that's my point, man. Is that like
do you think I mean, this is beyond here. I would need to give you an intuition pump so you don't do this very fallacious and low tier reasoning. Suppose you find a grilled cheese on the desert floor, right? I'm making this up on the spot. Yeah. And my friend says, I think it was made by desert cheese fairies. And then you say that's a very implausible explanation. I have no reason to believe that. I find that hypothesis dubious, whatever, right? And then your friend asks you, well, what's your competing hypothesis, right? And then I say, well, I don't have a competing hypothesis. Oh, well, then it means it was fairies. No, it doesn't follow that if I posit some hypothesis to accommodate the data and my interlocutor, meaning the person I'm arguing with, doesn't have some contrastive hypothesis to compete with mine, that infers my hypothesis is the thing in reality that explains the data. What you're going to need to resort to is some independent inference that justifies the claim the explanation is that thing. There's an infinite range of things that can accommodate the data. Right? And you saying that it's God is just something I'm skeptical of, and you haven't provided anything. When you ask me what's my theory, it doesn't follow that if I don't have an explanation for the data, that it means your explanation is true. That there's no way in the world you think that that's how that works. Or else you would be committed to parity type reasoning, like in the case I just illuminated, where there's a person who thinks what explains a grilled cheese on the desert floor is grilled cheese fairies, and that other friend not having a hypothesis means that the friend is committed to that fact that it's fairies. Like, no, that's first, this is a very basic error in philosophy of science, where just because it's called a last man standing fallacy, where if there is some explanandum, which an explanandum is a type of nomenclature in philosophy of science, which means the thing aiming to explain the data. So we have some datum, article of datum, and I say, this is the thing I'm manufacturing to accommodate the fact. If there is no other competing hypotheses in the range of hypotheses aiming to accommodate the data, what it doesn't follow is the only left standing hypothesis is the one that explains it. That's number one. So, you haven't given, first, me not giving you one doesn't even follow it's the only explanation. If I wanted to, I could probably on the spot manufacture a range of plausible explanations. There's probably more plausible explanations by more qualified people concerning fields like the sciences. And in any rate, even if there's both not anyone in science with a more plausible explanation, and both and the other thing being, I can't manufacture one on the spot. You haven't offered any reason to believe your explanation.
Yeah. So again, I know that you're talking about grilled cheeses and things like that. I feel
okay,
like
so just so we're clear, I want a reason to believe the explanation you offered. No, you haven't given any reason.
Yeah. So look, and I'll go back to I'll say another example, but the grilled cheese analogy that you said, right? Like when I dropped like the knowledge of saying like, hey, these are the bones, right, of Jesus Christ, and this was found, and it was all again woman chromosomes that were inside these bones. That kind of defeats the whole grilled cheese thing because I'm giving you a hypothesis, but then I'm saying, hey, look, this is also
defeaters are only. That's just a confusion. Defeaters are only for arguments. And if all you're saying is that the miracle being in the desert is just not as miraculous or it's not as improbable as the grilled cheese being in the desert, that's just missing the point. Whether or not the scenarios that are being juxtaposed, one has some less likely event. The point is what you're supposed to take away from this, which is showing your impoverished reasoning skills, is that the fact I'm committing to one explanation and my friend does not have another explanation, the fact he has no explanation and the only explanation standing
I was gonna say my explanation
doesn't follow. Look, you're not understanding what you asked me to do. Sorry, that voice.
So there's an actual story behind it that is in the Bible, though.
You asked me. Okay, no one cares. That's besides the point.
But that is the point, though.
No, that's besides the point. I understand that's your point, and your point is besides the point. Look, what I asked you for is reasons to believe it. You said if you don't have another explanation, then you should believe this one. I'm going to
explain that other explanation right now.
No. You're not. Can you steelman my point? Because it doesn't seem you're even listening to what's being said by me.
I'm trying to explain it to you, man, but you keep talking over me. So like,
no, steelman my point.
Look. You asked me before to explain how she would have gotten pregnant.
No. I'm asking you something right now. I'm asking you, look, I'm going to give you one last try. Steelman my point or you're getting dropped. I'm not asking you to do that.
Explain Steelman. What do you mean Steelman my point?
Okay, Steelman means to represent what I just iterated, the criticism I iterated, the best you can. Because you have no understanding, it seems, like the critique I'm raising, or at every instance I raise the critique, it seems you pivot intentionally. So now either we're going to have you articulate what my criticism was to see if you have an apprehension of what I just communicated.
I'm just doing the same thing that you're doing, so when I ask a question and you decide
okay, why are you over-talking me? Or, if you didn't track what was said, then we can go back and I will have to reproduce it so you can finally understand how your reasoning is garbage. Now, you can try steelmanning. Hopefully you understand now what I mean by steelman. And you can either steelman or we're going to need to reproduce what I said. You're muted. You can unmute yourself. Just stop over talking me. Okay, he's not. He seems like he doesn't know how to unmute himself, but he's not gonna go far anyways. Can we all tap the screen and share the live? We need more people up here. We have no one in the request. Hey, Angelic, which year you want to talk about?
I guess to kind of branch off of that a little bit. Not that I'm taking his position because I didn't really get all of that. But I guess as far as to make this a bit more practical with the grilled cheese analogy, adding to it, let's say the grilled cheese was being discussed for the entirety of that planet's existence, and there were only two debated theories. How would you perceive that new evidence?
I don't understand. So I don't understand what your point is supposed to be. What is the point of this question? In any case, if I don't have look, whether or not I have no competing hypothesis, I don't know. Now you're introducing something different. The point of the analogy was to show him his error in reasoning in thinking that if there's no other competing hypothesis, the only hypothesis standing is the one that explains the data. Now, if you're just saying there is some competing hypothesis, because you said there's two theories, there's two working explanations, then that just fundamentally defeats or mitigates what the aim of the analogy is supposed to be doing. The force of the analogy is to show a parity of reasoning where you're committed to believing the explanation given there's no other competing hypotheses, and to show him both he wouldn't actually bite the bullet on that commitment, and from him not biting the bullet, it's to show him that what doesn't follow from there being only one hypothesis is the hypothesis is true.
Yeah, not absolutely true, but I wanted to understand from your logic and reasoning that if there is, let's say, one hypothesis of two that have been, of the many, let's say, heavily debated for the entire existence of the planet, there's two main standing theories of the many that have been debated. Of the two, if we carefully analyze them, let's say one is overwhelmingly being supported objectively by a different multitude of sciences. and it's not definitive, but it's absolute that it's overwhelmingly pointing in that direction. How would you perceive that?
What do you mean? How would I? You just said if one has more justification, and along with the fact that most professionals in academic science adopt that explanation as more plausible, how would I have the view? Oh, I would have the view it's more justified, and most academics think it's the more plausible one. Like, what else? I don't know what you're asking me that isn't already baked in this scenario. Unless this is like a rhetorical question, I've literally no clue if you're asking anything substantial.
No, I'm not trying to like pin you. I'm just trying to understand like where you're at.
Yeah, but you're saying if there's a more justified explanation, what would be my view? That one explanation is more justified, the other isn't? Like, there's nothing unique I'm going to say that you haven't said.
I was just trying to get to an understanding if you accepted probability within your view of reasoning, because I only had a small window of trying to.
What would it mean to not accept probability? What does that even mean? Look,
well,
of course I accept evidential reasoning. That's the whole thing we were talking about. We were talking about a type of abductive inference that I was trying to make, considering the fact that Jesus resurrected and Jesus was born from Mary spontaneously without there was no sperm injected into Mary. She just had Jesus. Okay, we granted him those articles of datum, and I asked him to draw the inference to God. Right, that was obviously an abductive inference, so he could have either supported that evidentially or with certain heuristics, and he didn't either. Of course, I'm going to accept. I don't even know what the hell it would mean to accept non-evidential, to deny evidential-based reasoning. But in any case, yes, I don't know why you're asking these weird questions, unless in your experience you talk with people who deny evidential reasoning. I have no clue how in the world they reason. I don't know how from my last conversation you even thought it would be reasonable to ask a question like that. Maybe if you had like a large suspicion I was the type who is skeptical of probabilistic-based reasoning, maybe you would be in some epistemic position to ask a question like that. But there's no way you think that of me. But whatever. Yes, I accept probabilistic reasoning. Okay, so what?
Gotcha. Okay. I guess as far as evidence for God, it is my position after reviewing a multitude of fields of sciences that I have more objective data pointing in the direction that God does exist versus doesn't exist.
What's one of them?
But I guess prior to getting into that, a little bit of confusion I had as to listening to that previous conversation. I guess would you be able to define God for me from your perspective so I can navigate this to kind of bring?
I'm talking about bare theism, so it's just a mind that has the power to create a universe.
Gotcha. Okay. So as far as from a quantum physics perspective, are you familiar with the double slit experiment?
Not really.
Gotcha. Okay. I guess I'll set that one aside. I guess a little bit more of a simplistic positioning from physics.
What is that light acts like particle and wave?
Kind of. I mean, that's one of the functionalities, or I guess you could say, characteristics of quantum particles. But there's a specific experiment that I was referring to.
Okay, what is, okay, so what is so there's some quantum project, and the quantum project makes some novel discovery. What is the discovery, and how does that raise the probability there's a God?
Well, there's a lot of information and a lot of connecting of dots. But if it's something you're not familiar with, I don't know if we'd be able to get through all of that. I guess to make it more of a shorter jump within physics, and trying to understand how you reason with complexity and its origin of cause and effect, without dismissing cause and effect as an aspect of this reality that we observe on a 100% consistent basis.
I don't think causality is an aspect of this reality, but in any case, are you trying to say there's complexity and that points to God, or what?
Wait, you don't accept cause and effect within this reality? I don't know if I understood.
Well, cause and effect isn't a proposition, so there's nothing there to accept. If you're asking me, do I accept cause and effect as a feature of reality, then no, I don't accept that. But in any case, I don't see, that's not going to be interesting anyways. Look, I can even grant you that fact because that wouldn't turn on anything. But of course, I'm pretty sure most metaphysicians are actually people who are not sympathetic towards causal realism. Though I might be wrong. But in any case, if causal realism is something that's prevalent in metaphysics, then I'm fine with well, in fact, we don't even need to dispute the empirics, but my suspicion is most people in philosophy are not causal realists. So no, I don't think most people actually who are qualified in the field to talk about whether causality is a feature of reality. I have a large suspicion most people aren't. But in any case, let's just say causality is a feature of reality. There's complexities in the world. Continue.
Well, I guess setting aside philosophy, which we could expand into that later, but just kind of fundamentally getting to the awareness of the objective.
Causal realism is philosophy. You understand that?
Yeah,
right?
but
to make the claim that causality is a feature of reality is just a robust metaphysical claim, which I'm just going to say it here. And unless I'm wrong, I'll gladly take it back. But you have no argument supporting causality as a feature of reality. In fact, I've never seen in any of the, maybe years of reading in philosophy, I've never once ever seen any literature concerning arguments for causal realism. Not to say that there isn't, but they're not. That's why my suspicion is that they're not prevalent. But most metaphysical theses are like trash anyway. So, but I'm correct, right? You don't have an argument causality is a feature of reality.
So I guess if I'm going to jump ship from the foundational simplistic perspective I have in regards to physics that supports God's existence, to expand more into, it sounds like philosophy and the conjunction of philosophy and metaphysics is the direction you'd like to go in?
I'm asking you if you have an argument I'm going to grant you it either way. All I'm just asking, we don't even need to talk about your argument if you have one. I'm just asking you, do you have an argument that causality is a feature of reality?
Do I have an argument that causality is the future of reality?
Feature is a feature of reality.
Could you elaborate a little bit for me? This is something I've never been asked before.
You said that causality is a feature of reality. You said it's an aspect of reality, that causality is real. It's a part of reality.
Cause and effect exists.
That's what causality is.
Gotcha.
Yep, that's
Okay,
the
so
claim.
anonymous.
That's the claim. Mm-hmm.
So like the idea that if I, let's say, pick up a TV remote and drop it, and I
Yeah,
observe that
just cause and effect,
there's,
yes.
There's a cause and effect. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, you don't have an argument that that's a feature of reality, right?
I mean, if the empirical evidence that we could observe through a multitude of tests wouldn't be sufficient, I don't know where we could go from there.
Of course, an empirical. Okay, well, that would just be some type of scientific inference. That wouldn't be like some a priori argument that infers metaphysics is a feature of reality. Of course, that wouldn't do anything to do that. So the answer is no, then, as I suspected, obviously. But let's just say causality is real. The world is complex. What is the reasoning to think there's a God?
Well, if we consider cause and effect, because you're kind of throwing me off, it seems like you're heading in the direction as far as because we cannot objectively, definitively prove our external reality. Are you coming from that philosophical perspective?
I'm not talking anything about that. I'm granting you causality is a feature of reality. What I said is you don't have an argument, which you conceded. We could just move past that. So granted the fact.
I was just a bit confused. I'm trying to understand where you're coming from so I can help lead you
Well,
to
it doesn't.
that.
You said that, yeah. So obviously, there's a stage one presupposition that would require a stage one argument, which is that what I observe is in correspondence with reality. Now that makes some presupposition about some type of direct realist view in philosophy of perception where we directly observe the external world or something like that. But there's that, it might not even be, or maybe there's things similar to direct realism like disjunctivism and stuff. But in any case, there's a number of assumptions going on with the observations somehow getting to the metaphysical thesis that causality is a future reality, which would each independently at every chain of the reasoning require an argument. So if you're just merely saying that the observations, you have no prior inference first establishing our observations correspond with reality, we have observations of causation, therefore causation is real. Anything like that, if it's just causation is real, or we observe causation, of course that's not going to establish causality in the robust metaphysical or ontologically committing sense. So if you don't have that argument, that's fine. I suspected you didn't, but in any case, I'm granting you causality is real.
There is no science.
I'm granting you, well, that's, you'd have to give an argument for that. I do not grant the indispensability of causality in science.
If there is no causation. If cause and effect doesn't exist.
I don't grant that. No, I don't grant that at all.
There's no purpose to studying anything if there's no consistency within reality that we could branch off from.
Yeah, so, well, whether or not there's consistency to reality and whether or not there is causality is real are two different things. It's possible because the reality is consistent, there isn't causation, and that science has the same degree of utility that it currently has. Right? None of those are logically
Reality
tense.
is consistent
But
and
look,
we observe.
but look, I don't want to. We don't need to quibble on this. I grant you. I said it like a million times. I'm just going to grant you causal realism. But no, I 100% deny the claim that if causality is not real, then science is rendered stultified or incapable of doing what it does now. Or if anything like that's your claim, like science no longer has the utility it currently does. I don't grant you that, and you'd have to produce an argument. But I'd rather not quibble on that because you probably don't have an argument for that either. So let's just so causality is real. We're just going to give you the choice.
Because you're saying that you grant it and then you proceed to arguing against it. I'm not trying to win here.
I'm not arguing against it. I'm asking you whether you have arguments
against it.
No, I haven't presented any real reasoning against that.
Okay. Okay.
All I said is it doesn't follow.
Cause and effect exists within this reality.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, so if cause and effect does exist within this reality, and we overwhelmingly observe that anything that's of an effect, or we could say definably a creation, as it becomes more complex, it overwhelmingly demands more intelligence comparatively to random chaos allowing.
Oh, I don't grant you that.
Why not?
Oh, because I don't have reasons to accept it.
What are those? I guess what is
actually? If we grant you it, we have to do an inductive domain analysis. I don't know if you're familiar with inductive inferences, because that's the type. Okay, well, you're running an inductive type argument, and you don't even understand the relevant tenets of the species of reasoning you're giving. So look, the type of reasoning, correct me if I'm wrong, you want to say, in our range of observations, we have a sample size of observations, where for anything that is extremely complex, the things on the high end of complexities, those tend to be developed or manufactured by intelligent agents, whilst we go down the scale, the things that are less complex aren't, right?
That's what we consistently observe, yes.
Okay, so you're trying to make an inductive inference saying that we observe for anything that's extremely complex, it's made by intelligent agents. Then you want to say certain stuff maybe cosmologically or biologically are complex, therefore God. Yeah, we can already stop there because you're already doing an invalid inductive inference. So
no, I'm not making that jump there for God. I'm saying this is just one of the many components of the varying sciences that I have that supports.
I never said you're making the jump
Considering
into
that this is
God.
an aspect of evidence, why would we dismiss this evidence, or can we set it aside and grant it?
Yeah, so I never granted you I never accused you of making a jump to God. I said the inductive inference is already invalid. Because what I was saying is that, or what I was going to say, is we only have inductive inference to believe that complex things of the like that are akin to our web of experience are those that are manufactured by humans. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, and what's in question is what we don't know.
Wait, but the only thing, now you're only in a position epistemically to make claims like we have good reason to think for any complexity it's manufactured by human, not broadly by intelligent beings.
But not getting confused on the point that I'm trying to drive at, the simplistic logic and framework that I'm trying to establish that's consistent in the science overwhelmingly over and over empirically is that if you can counter the logic, as things become more complex and we can create a multitude of things in a multitude of different fields, that what's clear to us is that as something becomes more complex, it demands more intelligence.
Did you understand what I was saying, or did you not follow?
I guess if you can simplify your point, I understood that you were avoiding that understanding, trying to dismantle it or cover it. But if you can, we can set that aside and
cover it. Why are you using like these like rhetorical words to make it seem like I'm doing something weaselly? Look, I broke down the inductive inference you're doing. I did, and it just seems like you didn't track what I said. If you can maybe reproduce or steelman anything that I've said thus far concerning your inductive inference, be my guest. But then to claim without any apprehension of what I said, what I was doing was trying to veil or cover the type of reasoning you were giving as if to signal to the audience that I'm doing something dishonest. Then if you're going to make charges like that to make me seem like I'm in that type of position, I'm just going to force you to reproduce my criticism, and then you would just be willing, obviously not in any position to make those claims about me doing stuff dishonest. If you didn't understand, I don't know why you would repeat or make claims like I'm doing that. Did you understand anything that I said, or no? Because I'm fine with reproducing.
As far as my argument being inductive reasoning not being sufficient to jump to God, I agree with you. I granted that.
That's not my criticism.
Then I guess what did I miss?
In the inductive inference, the types of rational agents you have reason to believe are causally responsible for any artifact that's complex is ones that are strictly human, right? And I said, correct me if I'm wrong. Then you're only in an epistemic position to make claims that
but then I asked the question, what's the alternative if not what in question?
The alternative for what?
Meaning there's two categories to this, what we know where it comes from and what we don't know where it comes from.
I'm not understanding what you're asking me. You're asking me for an alternative to those two things?
No, that's what's in question, is that we have this...
You asked me what's your alternative, and I asked you alternative to what?
Yeah, you're bringing up this question of, well, these things that we observe are creation. Well, what's the alternative to that?
That's just not where we're at in the conversation. Okay, what I'm saying is that the inductive inference you gave is only levies reason to believe that for complex things are likely made by humans. That was my criticism. Now, if you're to appeal to other complex things that in our sample or range of inductive items, we don't have independent motivation to think those things are made by non-human intelligent agent, then you just aren't doing anything to get closer to God. Thanks for the heart, by the way.
Alternative, though?
Alternative to what?
As well as your position is too, but I can't consider nothing as an answer.
I don't know what you're asking me to offer an alternative to.
Meaning, if we dismiss my position, what would be the alternative to replacing that? Or we have
there doesn't have to be one. That just falls. Wait, that just falls afoul of the same fallacy that the other guest did, where if we diffuse the only standing hypothesis, or if I defeat or somehow dissolve your hypothesis, it's not required we then manufacture on the spot a new one, because now there's no explanation. Yeah, so why are you asking me to produce it like some competing hypothesis? I don't get it.
Well, I thought we were having a dialogue, and I thought you would have an alternative.
We are having a dialogue
to this.
Well, I don't see. I do have an alternative perspective. My perspective is that it's not done by God. That's my perspective. I don't have some alternative explanatory account for the datum if that's what you're asking, and that's not required either. Now, I'm just showing that your reasoning concerning your explanation is unjustified. You have no good reason to think the one you have. And there's another even more fundamental issue. Do you know how you even breach the gap between causation and correlation there?
Well, we gather as much evidence as we can to simplify the scientific method as we're trying to understand what is going on in front of us by running tests and generating theories from that data. As we rule out theories, we do have to be honest with ourselves and accept the one that is the strongest. I mean, it doesn't mean definitively therefore.
What is this responding to?
But does that make sense, what I'm iterating?
No, I don't even think it's responding, and I have no clue what you're saying unless it's something like I don't think you're saying anything that's perfect.
Because I'm just trying to understand if you're understanding me, because we seem to not be connecting.
Well, I gave you an inductive criticism.
Yeah, and
it didn't seem like you appreciated that.
No, that's why I immediately stated that it doesn't. My position with this doesn't mean therefore God.
Yeah, but I'm not saying it's not. What I'm not trying to contest is that, oh well, it's insufficient to infer God. I'm saying what you've offered is no reason at all. It doesn't raise the probability that there's a God at all.
No, like it's not evidence at all. Like it doesn't exist.
It's not evidence.
Or then I guess how would we define
for
evidence?
For one to say that it's evidence is something you never even attempted to undertake that task. All you were doing was producing some explanation for the data. You never gave me evidence in light of the explanation.
So the observation in the data, the observation of the data is the evidence, and we're just theorizing what.
That's not what evidence is. If it's evidence, the expectation that it obtains. Okay, what it means for something to be evidence in standard probabilistic language is that there's an x and a y where x and y are in some probabilistic relation where conditional on x, y is greater than than y bare, which just means the conditional probability considering the datum is higher than the bare probability, right? Now, in order for you to show that the bare probability and the conditional probability are demarcated, in which the conditional probability is greater, what you would have to do is give a deductive argument that infers the expectation that this datum is seen, or you would have to give some deductive inference that shows that this datum is expected, considering the hypothesis, in which when the datum obtains, it raises the probability.
Well, that's the whole purpose of the test, is no data is ever expected. I mean, we can anticipate, but by
then you can't generate evidence.
Well, that's what the test
what is there's no such thing as not expected evidence. That just doesn't make any sense. Something is only evidence when a hypothesis or proposition expects it.
But I guess I'm confused because
what do you think evidence is? I don't think you even are like you have any devices.
The next question is like, because
I just gave you a rigorous analysis of it, like as standardly used in discrete maths and philosophy of science.
Definition of evidence for me though, like my simplistic definition perspective would be is just what we empirically observe consistently over and over, and considering a multitude of other sciences as far as probability, taking into account mathematics on. That's
some datum is evidence for some proposition when the proposition expects the datum, such that when the datum obtains, it raises the probability. Look, it's like here. If you don't understand it that way, even though that's pretty basic natural language, and this is like a non-rigor. This is like a very basic way that's said in like high school level probability, like statistics. But in any case, here's an example. If I have a cake on the table, that's a proposition. What would be considered evidence? Well, when we have the datum that there are trails of frosting leading up to the table, the proposition there's a cake on the table, conditional on the data that there is crumbs of frosting leading up to the table, the conditional probability of the proposition there's a cake on the table, considering the data, is more likely than bare data, bare hypothesis, where it's just we have the proposition there's a cake on the table. When we have the datum in condition with the hypothesis, the data raises its probability. An example of something that's not is that if there's a red balloon in my backyard, we have that datum and we have the proposition there's a cake on my table. We don't deduce the expectation there's a red balloon in my backyard if there's a cake on my table, but we can deduce certain expectations like there would be crumbs of frosting leading up to the table if there's a cake. So what you would have to do is first show me how the datum is expected by the hypothesis. Then you'd have to show me how the datum obtains in the actual state of affairs. And then you'd have to show me that the conditional probability is significantly greater than the bare hypothesis, where the probability is raised to some sufficient echelon or threshold. Now, step one is showing me how it's deduced.
I'm not disagreeing with any of that, but if our goal is to figure out if there's a cake on the table, I'm saying let's just go look at the table. I'm trying to be a bit more direct, if that makes sense. I'm not disagreeing with anything that you stated.
We are being direct right now. I'm trying to understand what is the data that you're saying is evidence for God, and how is it expected under the hypothesis?
So I'm presenting data that I'm trying to bring you directly to, and to see if we can
get an agreement
on the. So evidence set one is that as something becomes more complex, it demands more intelligence to allow for its origination.
That's not datum.
Specifically with creation, that's empirical data.
And I've already talked about this. I've already told you how I've already dissolved this type of inductive inference. I've already responded with, in the sample range of your experiences where there's an artifact of complexity, the only intelligent design that you have inductive reason to believe manufacture that thing is a human, such that you then generate reason to think for any next artifact that's complex, that thing is manufactured by a human, not an intelligent agent simplicator. Therefore, if that's the type of inference you're using, then you get no closer to God. I've already said this. Now, what you haven't told me is even what the datum is that you're saying is the evidence for the proposition God exists. So I'm still confused. What is the datum that you're appealing to?
Well, if something that is empirically observable over and over isn't considered data, I'm lost. I don't know how.
The data is just the thing where it's just the entities in the observation. For example, in the cake hypothesis or cake example, what the datum is the entities that are crumbs of frosting. That's the datum. So we have a set of entities that are crumbs on the floor leading up.
Is an observation of the crumbs considered data and evidence? Is what I'm confused on, because the way you're explaining to me is it sounds like it's not.
Yeah, but what you're doing, what your observation was more than an observation. You introduced other facts like it being consistently observed over time for a length of time. That's not datum. That is an inductive inference where you're talking about a range of observations that are observed consistently over time. That's what I already objected to.
The consistency is what makes it data.
What?
Deducting the consistency, meaning we only need to observe the crumbs one time. That if we observe it a multitude of times, it doesn't increase the likelihood of that data being more significant or reliable.
I don't know what seeing the crumbs more has to do with anything.
Meaning if there's an overwhelming amount of more corroboration to that data, it confirms it as more reliable. There's more consistency to it. So
yeah, but I don't understand how more
crumbs leading up to the table. Let's say we see crumbs in the driveway as well, and we see crumbs everywhere. That adds to the consistency of the crumbs that we initially observed, to the leading up to the cake on the table.
I don't understand what that's changing.
But I guess, like, simplistically, yes or no, like, is observing the crumbs once?
That's just to say you have a range of datum.
Okay, we can call it a range, but is observing the crumbs?
I'm just trying to understand, even if it's a range of datum, what's the datum? Yeah, it is an evidence. I'm trying to understand what is the range of datum you're appealing to then?
So the complexity argument is just fundamentally one of the aspects of data or evidence. It's the crumbs. It's one set of crumbs that we're...
But what is the datum? Just tell me what the datum is.
The complexity perspective that we observe empirically are the crumbs, if that makes sense.
So the complexity is the datum.
If the crumbs are the datum, if I'm understanding you correctly, yes.
So the complexity of what?
The complexity of anything within our existence, as it becomes more complex, it demands more intelligence, what we observe over and over. That's what I consider to be evidence, the crumbs.
Wait, what's the datum?
More evidence to as why there is a cake on the table.
Wait. I'm not clear what the datum is.
So the crumbs are the datum, yes?
Look, I'm not asking you about the case. I'm asking about this God case. Your actual
I'm trying
argument.
to communicate through your language.
So don't... Wait, that's not helping anything. I'm trying to understand what your datum is that you're claiming is evidence for God. So introducing this case where I was explaining, I was outlining in a nutshell what it means for something to be evidence. When you reintroduce that example to explain what your actual datum is, that's not helping. Why in the world would that be? I'm not confused. I was explaining to you how something is evidence for a hypothesis. I'm just asking right now, what is the datum you're claiming is evidence for God?
Gotcha. Okay. So, and then also in addition to that, I agree with you. Just because we observe crumbs doesn't mean that there's a cake on the table. I think we agree.
I'm just asking you what's the datum. Just answer.
So as far as the particular set of data that I'm trying to see if I can get a direct contention with, if I'm viewing it correctly or incorrectly from your point of view, is that it is a objective fact that as everything becomes more complex as far as creation within this reality of what we observe, it does in fact demand more intelligence to allow for the construction of it.
Okay, I don't grant you that.
So then what would be the direct contention with that without avoiding the understanding of that position?
The contention is I haven't been supplied with an inference in light of that. Yet you never rendered an argument in support of that.
So like comparing the code
even
to
if I
Grand Theft
granted you
Auto
that.
to a t-shirt.
Sorry?
So comparing the complexity of a t-shirt to the code of Grand Theft Auto. There's a clear variation in the complexity of its organization. So
okay.
if we're not going to accept the data or the inference of that data that the Grand Theft Auto
I don't understand how appealing to a particular is going to do anything to show you how generally some generalized inference about the general set of entities had in the cosmos, that if they're complex, it's likely made by an intelligent agent. Show me one video game and it has a string of code sequences is more likely developed by an intelligent agent. Therefore, we should think all objects in the cosmos that, if complex, are likely made by an intelligent agent is obviously an invalid induction. So I'm not understanding. That can't be the induction.
On the floor doesn't mean there's a cake there. We agreed on that. I'm just giving.
I'm asking you what is the argument that establishes that it's more likely that if we observe something complex, it was developed by an intelligent agent.
Okay, so this is just we're just looking at the crumbs right now, and we're asking if this is not the cake, if these are not crumb cakes, what are they and where did they come from? So if I'm saying it's the cake is where these crumbs came from, we would need an alternative. Otherwise, we have to accept that that's the only standing position at the point. It doesn't mean definitively, therefore, that the crumbs are from the cake, but we have to.
It being the only standing position doesn't do anything at all. It doesn't give you any reason to believe it. In fact, you have good reason to disbelieve it and it be the only position. But in any case, we're not talking about anything being the only position. I'm asking you currently to render an argument in support of the claim that for anything that's complex, it's more likely designed, right, developed or manufactured by an intelligent agent.
Yeah, so this is where I was kind of questioning about that in the beginning because I'm very confused on this, on how you perceive this, because we're questioning if there's a cake on the table. We're observing crumbs on the ground, and I'm creating a theory on the crumbs, and I'm asking for an alternative theory if my theory doesn't make any sense or any contradictions within my theory, anything that's illogical about my theory. But you're kind of just taking to the position, well, your theory isn't absolute, therefore we just don't know. And I'm saying, well, that's fine. Let's keep questioning this.
What are you saying? No way that's your takeaway of what I'm doing. That your theory is not absolute. What I'm contesting is you've produced no argument for. Nope, that's already error. You've reproduced this error a range of times. What we're not tasked with doing, first, we're not talking about that at all. This isn't even a component of the conversation. What's my competing alternative has nothing to do with this. Right now, you have a burden, and the burden is for you to generate an argument or render an argument for the proposition that it's more likely that if for anything that's complex, that thing is made by an intelligent agent. Now that's what I'm asking, and I've been asking on repeat for the argument for.
But that's why I referred to if the question of is what we observe empirically consistently considered more reliable data if we observe it consistently.
Can I get the argument? Why are you asking me a question? Look, what's the argument that's more likely for anything complex? It was made by an intelligent agent.
Well, that is the argument. The data that supports that argument is what we observe. Like
that's the proposition. That's not the argument.
What would be the difference between a proposition and then an argument within this context?
Jesus Christ, you don't know the difference between a proposition and an argument?
Within this particular context is what I'm asking.
I'm not using it in any context. An argument, a proposition is presumably you know what a proposition is. Jesus fuck, there's no way in the world you don't know what a proposition is. But
you're
if
presenting an
presumably
idea about something.
No, a proposition is an idea. No, an idea is not a proposition either.
Yes, they're
ideas can be
in the context. That's why I ask contextually. What's the variation so I can understand on how to articulate?
By proposition, what is not meant in philosophies or in the natural language is an idea, right? So obviously, I don't know. Do you know? What do you think? You understand a proposition is a truth-apt statement, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Hopefully, you're not saying yeah and talking out your ass. Okay. So a proposition is a statement that's truth-apt. Okay, great. Now that we established that, what is an argument? An argument is a sequence of propositions that infers a proposition. An example is, all men are mortal, Socrates is mortal, therefore Socrates is man. Or sorry, all men are mortal, Socrates is man, therefore Socrates is mortal. That's an example of a valid deductive argument, right? It's a string of propositions that infers a conclusion. The standard device of an argument used both as a linguistic device and by academic philosophy professionals. There's no way this was ambiguous. You have to be bullshitting. Now that we're clear what an argument was, and it took you this long to put into question what an argument was, even though we've been communicating the language from the onset, what is the argument? That it's more likely for anything that's complex, it was made by an intelligent agent.
Gotcha. Okay. So we have a t-shirt that took 1 hour to construct and only one person. We have an automobile that took a team of people to construct and months. And we have a video game that took 10 times more people and years to construct. What do we deduce from that? My argument from that, of what we observe, is that as something becomes more complex, it demands more intelligence to construct it.
That's not, oh my God. Okay. Don't you have like a bunch of followers and haven't? No, look, the point is, you know nothing, like you're like conceptually impoverished. You have a lacking in all tenets of science, of philosophy. You have no devices of philosophy. You have no clue what an argument is. Right now, you're still struggling to produce an argument. And you have no clue what the types of arguments you are running are, and in which ways they're sound and valid. You have like, right now, it's like so difficult to communicate with you because you're the one arguing out of your ass and you have no clue how to actually argue. Huh?
Oh no, usually when somebody brings somebody else up, it's to drown me out or to kick me off and get rid of me. But
I know this guy's a friend of mine who tends to be more patient. I don't know how helpful he is.
Oh, okay, sometimes on your side, that's good. I like a challenge.
Well, sometimes he gets on my nerves. Sometimes he's patient and actually resolves problems. Hopefully Davy's the good Davy today. But in any case, all you've named was 3 examples of things manufactured by specifically human agents. Now, all you're saying is there's some range of things. Okay, so there's a very small probability from the 3 examples you gave that's more likely the next instance some complex object is made by a number of humans. That's all you've established. I'm trying to understand the proposition.
So how do you determine that's a small probability? How did you come to the conclusion small?
The range of
what are you comparing that to?
You've named 3 instances.
Okay, but what are you comparing that to determine that it's small?
Nothing. The fact that I don't understand look. If I have in my web of experience, I have one instance of observing an apple and it's red. That gives me a very fringe, more inductive reason to think the next instance I see a red apple or an apple, it will be red, right? But given I've only experienced an apple once, that's not very good inductive reason. If I observe 1 million apples in different plates, in different geographies across the planet, and all the apples I've ever came across, let's say it's 1 billion, right, in all parts of the planet, they're all red. That's really strong inductive reason. I think the next apple I come across, it will be red. Now, all you named was 3 instances of things manufactured by humans, so we're not even getting to non-intelligent design, or non-human intelligent design. But even then, the sample pool of instances are too small to generate a robust inductive inference.
But I do want to say I agree with you that a consistent observation does increase the probability of us being able to trust that evidence. It becomes more reliable.
No shit, this is like basic induction. I don't need you to...
Okay, so we agree.
Thank you.
When he gave the argument that complex things, we can infer that they're designed. I don't understand how he's actually making the design inferences in the cases that he gave. So he said, like, when you see a shirt, you infer that it's been designed. When you see a video game, you infer that it's been designed. How are you making design inferences about those things?
No, when we observe a shirt, we know for a fact that it's been designed. When we observe a video game, we know for a fact it's been designed.
I'm saying, how are you coming to the
question
design?
Is this reality and human beings?
I'm saying, how are you coming to how are you making the inference that those are designed?
Oh, this is just one of the bits of evidence. In other words, the crumbs on the ground that we're observing. We don't know if there's a cake on the table, but we are observing.
Oh my God, he's not understanding the
This
question.
is just one of the bits.
How are you making? What are you appealing to make the inference that some shirt you see is designed without actually knowing, without actually watching it be designed, like going to a factory or something? Like you just see a shirt on the ground.
God's in question right now.
What are you like appealing to make the inference that it's designed?
Well, if we never observe the shirt being created, we don't know.
So you think that if you see a shirt and you haven't seen its creation, you don't know if it's designed?
In what world are we talking? What's the context? Is this
Jesus Christ!
Isolated
This is
like
just
you're just
going
walking,
to the
you're just
ground.
walking, you're just walking on the street, and then you see a shirt on the ground.
Okay, if I'm a human being in this reality and I observe a shirt on the ground, knowing that I've observed shirts be created in the past, yes, I can infer that that shirt was created.
Okay. Wait. He's undermining his own point because you heard what he appealed to, right? He appealed to his background knowledge about shirts.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, but we don't have any background knowledge about universes and whether they're designed.
Yeah, that's what I.
Yeah, but it's funny that you raised that objection, and I raised the other objection that the set of objects that are the intelligent designers are exhaustively human, such that you only develop reason, you only levy reason to think that complex things are made by humans. Now you've raised the objection that you have no priors of other objects akin to planets, celestial bodies, cosmos being designed. So you have no priors in that. Now he's just done, and he's still not even tracking what's going on. Wait, that just undermines the whole argument. That
undermines the whole argument by appealing to his background knowledge.
If you conceded to those two things, that just means your argument has no standing. It's just fundamentally
Can you
dissolved.
elaborate on that for me? I don't understand that. Why does my argument fall apart?
If you've never seen a glue,
let me try.
Okay, go ahead.
So why do we throw away the evidence of the crumbs on the ground just because?
Okay, just forget about the cake. Okay?
That we don't know.
Let's talk about the shirt,
Wait,
right?
you have priors of crumbs of frosting coming from cakes.
If I have that, then yes, we can consider it. If I
you don't have priors about celestial bodies being designed, nor do you have any inductive. You don't have any priors of there being any intelligent agents other than humans that are responsible for complex manufacturing, such that you don't have inductive motivation for the set of items you gave. And if you did, the only entities that would be responsible for the complexity would be the type of humans.
I think I see what you're getting at. Okay, so this is where I now better understand your position because you're not taking a position. So you're arguing to support a non-position, but you can't, I guess, how long can you do that for, though? Meaning, are you always for the rest of your existence?
Let me try.
You're not understanding.
Maybe let me try.
The point is that... Okay.
All right, so I said you see a shirt on the ground, and I asked how do you come to the conclusion that it's designed without watching it be designed? What you said was you know that you have like knowledge in your background web of beliefs about what tends to bring about shirts, and that's like humans designing them, right? But that just undermines your whole point because we don't have any background knowledge about universes, so we can't make a design inference by invoking that sort of principle.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah, but if we, let's say we observe a shirt on the ground, we've never seen shirts be created before, we don't know what the shirt is, we can present theories on that and begin to question it and compile the evidence and have conversations about that evidence and the theories, but then one person comes along, isn't willing to generate a theory and says, you're all wrong on trying to generate a theory on this. We don't know. I don't know if you're all wrong. I do know that.
I don't see the problem with doing philosophy with a hammer, right? You can just undermine everyone's point and show how they don't have any justification for their position, but just not take a position, right? The fact that someone doesn't have a position doesn't undermine the criticism. So, like for example,
I don't know why you keep bringing this up.
Let's say I'm agnostic on whether the amount of atoms in the universe is even or odd, right? I can go ahead and undermine everyone's justification for thinking that the amount of atoms is even or that the amount of atoms is odd without taking a position. In fact, it's probably the only rational thing to do is to not take a position on that.
I agree. So essentially,
if you agree with that, then
why
you can see that what you were saying was like completely stupid.
Yeah, like
no,
it doesn't follow. I have to give
by taking a non-position and providing criticism of other positions, you're assisting in the argument. But to dismiss solid evidence, because it sounds like you're taking.
But this is
a different. Granting you have any evidence.
This is a different. Look, this is a different criticism. Earlier, before you were just saying, oh well, you shouldn't criticize other people if you won't even offer a hypothesis.
No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that I guess it's incredibly difficult for me to expand forward if I don't know if we can get to an agreement on the objective science that I'm presenting and how to perceive that. Because you're saying that my perception on the evidence that I'm presenting is wrong, but at the
I don't think you've offered any evidence.
Yeah, you didn't offer any evidence.
I don't understand how complexity is.
In fact, he conceded he doesn't have evidence by denying his priors.
I don't understand. Yeah, well, he could appeal to some other reason for the design inference, but I don't understand how he thinks complexity is a hallmark of design if he thinks everything in the universe is designed.
But you do understand logically your foundation is I don't know, and I do know that you're wrong though.
Yeah, that's the foundation I have for people. That's the foundation I have for when people claim that the amount of atoms in the universe is even.
But if you know that,
like, is that supposed to be a reductio or what? Like, wait,
no,
you can dissolve the
claim is that
reasons
they have no justification for their position.
Yeah, they can provide reasons that are bad, and then you can deconstruct the reasons and show how they're bad.
The thing they could be wrong about is that they have justification for their position.
So I guess from what we do observe in regards to the complexity of created things within this reality.
Yeah, I don't understand why you keep talking about complexity. I don't understand why you're talking about complexity.
So can you give me one particular or direct explanation to why it's bad reasoning from what we observe my inference on?
We just gave you two.
Actually, we gave three. I just offered the fact that complexity isn't the hallmark of design.
Oh yeah, that object. Yeah. Yeah, if you think everything is if everything's designed, then even if you observe things that were not complex, and that's all the observations you had to go off, and you had no priors about intelligent, rational agents like humans developing non-complex stuff, then there's still the fact of the matter. Like I don't understand the reason.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So yeah, I think we hit a wall on that one. I guess to try a different approach.
Well, to be clear, you hit a wall.
Yeah.
Okay. I hit a wall.
We've given criticisms, and you haven't actually responded to any of them.
To hit a different approach in regards to the physical foundational structure of this reality in regards to the quantum particles that make up everything. Photons, neutrons, protons, electrons. And all of these particles existing in what is considered the superposition. So this is objective perspective. I want you to consider for a moment all these particles existing in an infinite state of potential in a room. Now, what happens is they literally instantaneously collapse to create what we consider perceivable reality. Now, you observe a cheeseburger or a cake on a table, and then you observe a cat on the table next to that cheeseburger or the cake. They're both made of the exact same quantum particles.
Is this supposed to get us to God somehow?
It's not gonna.
You're willing to consider the objective data, which it sounds like you're not.
We grant you the data. Look, I literally don't care about the data. I don't want to quibble over that. I can grant you literally any bullshit. I can grant you any bullshit you ever wanted in the world, and I don't think we would ever get to God. So yeah, let's just grant you all the data. Just explain to me how the data is evidence for God. Just do that.
Yeah, so as far as like, I would be presenting objective scientific data to you guys and asking you what your theory is on it, but you guys aren't taking positions.
We don't need it. Yeah, just what we're asking is for you to produce an argument in light of the proposition God exists. That's all we're asking. So this thing about present an alternative theory is just deviating from the aim of the live, which is for you to produce an argument. So, and I've made this clear. You've done this like so many times. It should be familiar to you at this point that every time you make that avenue in dialogue, what I would do is straighten it up by telling you, no, I want an argument for the claims you're making. If you're saying this is evidence for God, give the argument. Look, you're saying there's quantum data. Okay, how are we getting to God? Superpositioning. Okay, how's that evidence for God?
Because once you recognize that everything within the existence of this observable world is instantaneously collapsing from the quantum superposition to all of this varying complexity that we observe from the same four quantum.
Yes, he's going back to complexity again.
No. This is not about complexity.
You just said the word complexity.
That is a word that was in regards to the explanation of what I'm going through, yes.
You're saying our universe is so complex. Right? That's what you're saying? You're talking about how sophisticated
let me take that word out since we don't like it. The variation that we observe in this reality.
Variation? Why would variation be better expected under God?
It's synonymous to what I'm trying to iterate to you guys. But
what's the point with the quantum data?
So in regards to what we observe with the variation, all of these quantum particles are instantaneously collapsing to construct reality. Now, there's one of two generated theories. Again, I know you guys don't like theories. Within this reality amongst quantum physicists.
I don't like theories. What?
You don't like holding to a theory or trying to defend it, which is okay.
That's not true either.
Are you willing to take a position on a theory and defend it?
I develop theories concerning data that I have a transparent understanding and in-depth understanding of the range of data that are present in the scenario, and considering a range of evidences and heuristics, then I manufacture a theory. If you on the spot introduce data that I've never heard in a field that I'm not familiar with, and then expect me to fucking conjure up a robust theory, then you're actually like a fool. Yeah, I have a number of theories concerning a number of things that I haven't just for the first time heard of that you think is best explained by a theological being. Yeah, I have no problem in having theories.
Video games, and you avoided that.
We didn't avoid it. I asked you to defend. I asked you to defend how you're making a design.
So what we're trying to understand is how those facts are even evidence for God. That's what we were talking about. So when you asked about the theories about, oh well, what's your theory? That was just, again, a pivot, which we tried to stray away from, right? So we just wanted to get clear how that data somehow raised the probability of your theory.
Because of consistent observation being considered an aspect.
No, you don't need to talk about it now. We've already explained how it's not evidence at all. But in any case, we can move past it. And now we're talking about this new thing.
Yeah, so as far as the structure of our existence, all the quantum particles existing in a superposition create overwhelming variation from the same four quantum
Oh wait, I
particles.
just realized who this guy is. This is the guy that I wanted to come up and debate like a while ago, but he like ended the live. I just realized who you are. Oh my god.
No, I've seen this guy a bunch.
You gotta take a position though.
This guy's
otherwise you guys are just kind of picking me apart.
He's kind of like, to be honest, I don't think he's far off. I don't think he's far off from like Big John Steele. He's not. He's one of those people who blow up on TikTok but really don't deserve the fame.
I'm not really that famous, and I don't want to be famous. I just want to impart.
Well, 15 mil is something a lot of people would consider famous and wish that they had that number of followers. But in any case,
15 mil? No, I don't have 15 mil.
I said 15K.
Yeah, that's not really a lot, considering.
But in any case,
yeah,
yeah, but you don't even have like a very rudimentary understanding of philosophy and how to even give like proper arguments. So at least someone who has those devices and a lot more, there's like a range of them in my circle. You have nothing close to 15K. Some of them are actually close to being what I would qualify as academic professionals in philosophy. Right? And you're just like someone who doesn't even know what induction is, giving very confused arguments and have 15K. Like, but whatever, let's avoid the meta, whatever. I don't want to try and insult you and give you malice or whatever.
Forms of supporting our positions, ideally.
That has
I don't
nothing to do
understand
with
what you
supporting my
keep saying
position.
about the like being agnostic thing when you already conceded that being agnostic isn't a bad thing. In fact, it's something you should be if there's not adequate support for actually taking a position.
Yeah, but also being an explorer as far as considering other data and being willing to go into different directions and taking positions and test and be wrong. It's part of being a strong scientific agnostic.
If you think the data underdetermines either hypothesis, shouldn't you just be agnostic?
Wait, sorry, you cut out. Say it one more time.
If the data doesn't actually like point you towards one hypothesis over the other, shouldn't you just be agnostic?
In that situation, I would agree, yes. But that's where I'm trying to claim that I have more evidence pointing in one particular direction over the other.
Well, that's what we're debating about. That's what's in question.
But that's where I guess there's a bit of a misunderstanding as far as like what I'm presenting actually being evidence. We just started with one aspect of it, and you're throwing it on the ground, stepping on it, saying it's not objective evidence to support that side. But it is at least supporting it. And
we've explained how it isn't. You never responded to our critiques.
Three different objections.
But you guys aren't acknowledging that.
To the design argument that you offered. None of them were responded to.
There's no way he's tracking so poorly. He's saying we gave no response. Yeah. Just denying the objective evidence.
Three different criticisms.
I'm just simply stating that as I present evidence, I don't know if we're coming to a mutual agreement that it's accepted as.
We've already explained how it's not evidence.
And that's where I guess I'm confused on how to present evidence to you guys and what you consider evidence, even though previously we did agree that as something becomes more consistently overwhelmingly observable,
we already explained
more reliable evidence.
Evidence is what a hypothesis or proposition expects. It's something that raises the probability.
Most philosophers of religion don't take design arguments seriously.
Are you asking if I said that, or do I think that?
Would you say that?
Well, let me turn the table.
That's the sort of impression I get.
I don't think they take it serious. I mean, I think there's the theists do, but like, there's no way in hell that Joe Schmidt, Dan Linford, Oppie, Alex Malpass.
Joe Schmidt thinks like the design arguments are trash.
No, everyone who's actually someone who's, I'm pretty sure Craig doesn't even think design arguments are good. Right? He runs Cosmological.
Well, personally, I didn't want to start with design argument. I wanted to jump straight into quantum physics, but I didn't want to first initiate into an area that you weren't familiar with that you articulated to me. So I tried to.
I don't know. Do you think like it just sounds like some sort of like a argument from complexity, right? That's very similar to design arguments.
Well, it just comes from
look how complicated quantum physics, positron, whatever, quarks.
This isn't the absolute
complicated stuff.
Evidence, therefore God. There's a lot.
But look, like Davey, at this point, I don't know if it's even worth continuing this conversation because he doesn't.
Do you want to talk about something other than the argument?
One final question for you guys. I guess before I jump off, do you guys believe in what does not exist?
What? Are you saying do we believe that things that don't exist?
Yeah.
Why?
What?
Why would we believe
you're
that?
trolling. You're trolling.
No.
Right?
Very serious question. Let's see if this will take me like 2 minutes to get there.
Okay. No.
Okay. Now, what do you believe happens after we pass away? What happens to that individual consciousness?
I don't have a belief.
So no position. You guys aren't going to come up with a theory or something you're willing to defend? There's got to be something in there. Come on, give me something.
I don't think there's an afterlife.
I don't take a position, and there's no.
Okay, so that individual being, their consciousness ceases to exist.
Okay.
In other words, they revert to non-existence.
Revert to?
Yes, because
as if they were ever in a state of non-existence?
Yes, because prior to consciousness, they were non-existent.
Yeah, but there's nothing to apply the predicate of non-existence to when they don't exist.
Yeah.
Okay, so non-existence.
But they didn't revert to non-existence as if at some point they were in this like mode of being called non-existence.
So you agree non-existence does not exist. It's illogical to believe in what does not exist.
Okay.
Maybe Jack wants to talk with this guy. It might be more interesting. What do you think, David?
Jack is more interesting with the design arguments, I think, than you or me.
Well, if he's on my side, I want to say I appreciate you guys. My unconditional love to you. I'd love to expand into other areas of sciences.
No, he's
definitely run it again in the future. But
are you leaving?
Unconditional love to you. I'll catch you guys on the next
one. Wait, talk with Jack for a bit.
Yeah. So, like, do you think that the design inference can work on God's mind?
I guess I'll give it a couple more minutes. Wait. So does the design inference work on God's mind? What do you mean by that?
Well, in other words, does God's mind exhibit the same hallmarks of design that generate a design inference at the first order, right at the level of
In
the
other words, was
universe?
God created? Is that the question?
Well, that would be the conclusion.
Yeah,
Would be that God was likely. Yeah, the conclusion would be that God was likely created.
Okay, so that's what you're trying to.
He's asking if the same reasoning you're using to get to God, are you then warranted in using the same reason? I think God has an intelligent designer.
Yeah, exactly. So this is where I was trying to get an understanding on what position you guys take as far as the origin of the physical universe.
Can you mute when you're walking around?
Yeah, you're breathing into your mic. People would think you're running a marathon. What did you ask? I didn't hear what you asked. Oh, thanks for the heart subject. Are you there?
Yeah, can you ask your question again?
So to where he was trying to, I guess, jump to a conclusion and pin me on, it sounds like he's on your side.
Well, he wasn't trying to pin you to anything. He just asked a very simple question: does God's mind?
I can tell where he was going with it.
Generate
he agreed that I was correct in assuming where he was taking me with the question, and that was God created is the ultimate question that he was going to lead me to. So that infers.
No, that's not a question. That's not a question he's asking you. That's a conclusion. That's a conclusion, depending on how you answer the question that he did ask.
Okay.
So can you answer the question he actually asked you?
If you didn't hear it, we could just ask him Jack to repeat it. But if it's the same one I just gave you, then maybe I could reproduce it. Was it the same
God's
question,
mind.
or?
Is there
some
spark notes I can have on how you guys want me to address these questions?
We just want a yes or a no.
Just a yes or no.
Okay, so we're tying me to yes or no. Okay. What's the question?
Well, it's a yes or no question.
Either true or false.
Yeah. It was either yes, I'm warranted in using the same inference for God's mind, or no. The question was,
can God's mind be used to generate design inferences?
If you're still here in an hour and a half, I'll rejoin. I have to go to class. I'll see you guys later.
Oh, no. All right, well then, since you're leaving, I wanted you to just talk with him because he was going to leave anyways, but then we might as well go to the next guest. All right, well, it was cool talking to you.
Appreciate you guys. Unconditional love to you, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.
All right, peace.
Love you.
Have a great one.